إني ألقى الإيناس في صومي وصلاتي ودعائي للرحمن وجميع الطاعات.
So the question is, what is the purpose of life? This is where I'm going to present my case, Stephen is going to present his case, and you can make a decision. My case is that we believe that as Muslims, that the purpose of life is to worship in one God and to believe in one God and to worship in one God.
Sure.
When we say worship, we mean submission to the ultimate creator. Submission meaning, to follow all of the injunctions of God.
Cool.
And to abstain from all of the prohibitions of God.
Cool.
Why? Because no one knows how the human should be able to function in a sociological, in a domestic, in a psychological way than God or Allah.
Well, no one knows better than God.
Yeah, no one knows better than God.
Right.
Therefore, we say that God has sent messengers and prophets aforetime, the like me and Stephen will agree, of Abraham, Moses, yes? And all of those messengers and prophets came with one fundamental teaching, which is to believe in a one God and to worship a one God. Now, this is where we will part ways, but it's been nice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, things like Moses' 10 Commandments.
Yes, go ahead.
They are more or less internationally recognized law now.
That's a good point.
So that does suggest that there is an objective moral law.
Chime in?
Go on.
No, in the sense of, for example, it's not black and white in killing. Why is there such things as, say, manslaughter in the court of law, when God said, thou shalt not kill? And also the first 4 commandments, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken, believe in God, no idols, respecting parents, right? And I don't know what the 4th one was, but I think the 4th one might be...
You've got a reference here.
Yeah. But the same morality is accepted
those have got nothing
worldwide.
to do with like judicial court systems. Like, we don't live our lives by that kind of thing. Like, no one is...
No, look, forget about this for a second.
No, but I was just saying...
I do accept this point,
the
though.
moral commandments.
I think most people would accept that killing is wrong, generally speaking. There are exceptions to it, but generally, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the 10 Commandments are generic statements. There are exceptions.
Very
to them.
simple, very
simple. But there are generic things, which I think is right, are internationally kind of recognized. Cool. Now move on. We believe in these prophets and messengers that came before time that had one fundamental message, which is to believe in one God and to worship one God. Now they came with 2 things. We as Muslims believe that they came with 2 things. They came with a message,
Right.
and at the same time they came with a miracle or a sign or evidence. Now the message was always the same, to believe in a one God and to worship a one God. The miracle was different according to time and place, but it was something that went against the natural order and was probabilistically, you could say, almost impossible to think about or to execute had it not been from the higher power.
Right.
So, we do believe, as Muslims and Christians, both of us believe in the parting of the sea and all these kind of things. And we believe that they were intentionally meant to defy the laws of nature, really.
Like Noah's Ark.
To prove Noah's Ark, we have different narrations of it. But they were defying the laws of nature, and these laws of nature, and this would act as an evidence, as a proof.
Sure.
You see what I mean? So Muslim, this is my case now. He can present his Jesus as God case. Well, my case is the following. My case is that we believe that the Prophet Mohammed is the final prophet.
Okay.
And was the final prophet that was mentioned by Jesus Christ and those people that came before him.
Why is he the final prophet?
Why is he the final prophet? Because humanity had reached a time where it was necessary for it to have one universal system that it could follow. We as Muslims believe that time had come 1400 years ago.
Don't Sikhs believe that their prophet is...
Sikhs don't believe in prophets. Sikhs believe in gurus, which are different to prophets.
Sure.
Alright, so moving on now, what I was going to say...
But their guru is like more recent than...
Yeah, he's 400 years ago. Yeah, that's right.
It's only for here in Punjab. It's very philosophical.
It's a different
religion.
The Sikh faith is a different discussion for a different person.
Cool.
They have a Punjabi-based religion, which is based in Punjab, and doesn't recognize the divine nature of any of the religions that came before. Cool. The difference between Islam and Sikhism is that Islam recognizes the divine nature of Christianity.
Yeah, because it was expanded.
We say that there are some parts of Christianity which is true, and some parts of Christianity which is not true.
Right.
There are some parts of Judaism which is true, and some parts of Judaism which is not true, and that Christianity originally, or Christ is the Messiah, and that he was the Injil or the Gospel. No, he wasn't the Son of God, I don't believe. But that the Gospels were sent to him, yeah? But then those Gospels were changed and corrupted. So that's what we believe. They obviously don't believe in the same thing.
Yeah, we believe we have thousands of Greek manuscripts, of the original New Testament,
So
and they all confirm each other.
They believe that the 6,000 manuscripts that confirm each other. We say no, really.
I'm pretty sure there are some inconsistencies amongst
They're very, very minor.
but they're still
there.
for the word of God.
All right, so we would say, now what is the evidence of Islam? I'll tell you what we believe the evidence of Islam is. Number one, that you could say the prophecies of Jesus Christ. So the prophecies of those people that came before the Prophet Muhammad, which you will see in the Bible, funny enough. And we don't say that the Bible is a completely discarded document. So there are things, if you look at, for example, the book of Isaiah, chapter number 29, verse number 12, it says that there will come, it was talking about prophets that will come in the future, and it said it will be said to them, read, and then they will say, you're not of the learned. The Prophet Muhammad, when he came, these exact words were said to him. Read, Iqra, and he said, I'm not of the learned. I'm not of the learned. In addition to that, if you look at the book of Isaiah, chapter number 42, you'll find that it's angry. So 42, Isaiah 42 describes also people that will come in the future, or a prophet that will come in the future, and it describes even the geographic location, which is in present day Arabia. So we say that this is a very specific kind of prediction. Number two, the evidence within Islam, you could say, number one, the preservation of the Quran. Despite the fact that the Quran is 1,438 years old, we believe that the Quran has been preserved, and the same way that the Prophet read it, we're reading it today. We have the preservation of the Quran documented, not only in written form, as you would be able to see if you go to Yemen, in Sana'a, where you have the actual physical Uthmani Mus'haf, but it's also, we have a chain of provenance which goes all the way to the Prophet, which is not, we would say, it's not the same in other religious traditions. Number three, we say that the Quran and the Hadith, which is, by the way, we believe that the angel Gabriel came to the Prophet Muhammad and he gave him two kinds of revelation. One of them was the Quran, and the other one was how to believe in the Quran, how to accept the Quran, So, as it relates to the second category, we say that there are a range of different prophecies within the Quranic discourse which affirm the Quranic message. And I'll give you one example, which I keep using here because I think it's quite a precise one. That in chapter number 30 of the Quran, if you look at the first 5 verses, it was referring to a battle which was going on between the Persians and the Romans. That the Romans have been defeated, but in 3 to 9 years that they will defeat the Persians in a nearby land, and that the Muslims will be rejoicing. This prophecy, despite it being unbelievably risky, did materialize in the way that it was mentioned, and it was completely risky. So had it not materialized in this way, it would have dented the reputation of the person who's claiming to be the prophet, and it would have.
Luckily,
we could say luckily, you could say accurately as well.
Yeah.
Now, there are a range of prophecies which are mentioned in the Quran, the Hadith, which I've done a video on recently, actually last week, which I'm not going to repeat here.
Sure.
So I'm going to just suffice with that one example. What I will say to you is that there are many different prophecies in the Quran and the Hadith. In addition to these prophetic things, we say that there's another layer of miracle, which is the linguistic miracle of the Quran. We say that the Quran is a linguistic miracle, in so much as the Arabic language is used and manipulated in a way which could not have been manipulated by a human being. And I'll give you 1 or 2 easy examples to fathom. Even as it relates to the structure of chapters, you'll find that there's an unbelievable kind of balance. Every chapter, yes, the beginning of the chapter links with the ending of each chapter. And the ending of each chapter links with the beginning of the next chapter.
Sure.
This is, despite the fact that the Quran was revealed in a non-chronological way. It was
then goes.
Yeah. So that's one thing. Another thing is you'll find incredible balance. So if, for example, chapter 2 of the Quran has 286 verses. If you look into the middle of that verse, in the middle part of the chapter, it says, وَكَذَلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا. We have therefore made you a middle and balanced nation. And appropriately, it says that in verse number 143, which is exactly the middle of that chapter. These are just some examples, and I'll give you another example, which I have...
Well, yeah, but to what end? Go on.
To what end? I'll tell you another example.
No, I don't want to...
Okay, no, fine. Forget that example. A fourth layer of argument is that if we look at, and this is where I've become a little bit polemical, but he can have his chance afterwards as well. If you look at the scientific discourse of the Quran. Now, we as Muslims, we don't believe that science, yes, is a certain reality that doesn't change. History has shown us, as philosophers of science have shown us, that no doubt science has changed.
Of course it has.
Yes? From the time of Newton to Einstein,
sure,
and other such realities. And these are what Thomas Kuhn calls a paradigm shift. However, we say that the scientific method is a very strong method, and so if there is a massive disparity between the text and the scientific method, perhaps someone who is of scientific orientation like yourself would have reason to doubt. What I say is that the correlation between the Quranic discourse and the scientific discourse, even from a 21st century standard, is closer than you'll ever find in any other world religion. Therefore, I would say, if you're a fan of science, you ought to, of all of the religions in the world, be most convinced by the scientific discourse found in the Quran.
Okay.
I'll give you 2 or 3 easy examples for you to fathom. In the Quran, in chapter number 39, verse number 5,
sure,
it says, يُكَوِّرُ اللَّيْلَ عَلَى النَّهَارِ وَيُكَوِّرُ النَّهَارَ عَلَى اللَّيْلِ. That God wraps the night into the day and wraps the night into the day into the night. The earliest commentaries like Ibn Abbas and others, they said that this was a revolution, and they said it was like a turban. Therefore, they calculated from this verse, people like Ibn Abbas, people like Ibn Ahmad ibn Hanbal, which are old commentaries, like of 1,200, 300 years, Ibn Taymiyyah and others, they said that the earth was round. Cool. If we compare this to the biblical discourse, in Job chapter number 9, verse number 6, you'll find that clearly the earth is flat in the Bible with pillars. Now we say that one is much more superior than the other in terms of the discourse.
Sure, but it had been said that the world was round.
I'm not saying that.
The Greeks.
Yeah, I'm not saying that because the Quran says that the earth is round,
sure,
that they must be from the God.
Sure.
What I'm saying is, if you had to choose between all the world religions,
sure,
that which is most concurrent with the scientific method,
sure,
is the Quranic message.
Yeah, the lesser of two evils in that sense.
No, and what we're saying is that I'm not saying here that there will not be any contradiction between science and the Quran.
Yeah, there definitely is. Does the Quran have the book of Genesis, for example?
No, we don't have book of Genesis. And by the way, the account in Genesis is completely different to the Quranic discourse. So we don't believe, we're not compelled, like evangelical, I'm not saying you are, because I know that you believe in a 14 billion year old universe. But as Muslims, we are not compelled to believe in a 6,000 year old universe.
Sure.
Why? And we can say that the 6 periods that mentioned in the Quran are actually periods of time.
So do Muslims believe in, say, Adam and Eve?
We believe in Adam and Eve are the names of the first 2 humans. There's no way to disprove this,
okay,
right? So we believe that the first 2 human beings, Adam or Hawa,
How do we know there were 2? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, this is something that doesn't prove or disprove Islam.
Yeah, I'm not saying it does, but...
Pardon?
I'm not saying, but you said like...
Yeah, but look, the story of Adam and Eve in the Quran is radically different from that in the Bible. Once again, there are some continuities and some similarities, but there are differences. So what I would say to you is that don't just...
Can I not
ask a question, go ahead.
Wouldn't, say, a text from God, should it not be infallible?
Yes, absolutely. That's my point. Yes, we're saying that in fact the Quran makes this challenge, and I'll make this as a point. The Quran in chapter number 4, verse number 82, it says, أَفَلَا يَتَدَبَّرُونَ الْقُرْآنَ. Have they not pondered over the Quran? وَلَوْ كَانَ مِنْ عِنْدِ غَيْرِ اللَّهِ لَوَجَدُوا فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. Had it been from other than God, they would have found in it many inconsistencies and contradictions. Sure. That's a challenge for humankind. What we're saying is that you'll never be able to find an inconsistency or a contradiction in the Quranic discourse.
Just the scientific method?
No, the scientific method, we said, is limited and has itself gone through a evolution, yes? What we're saying is that...
I wouldn't say that the scientific method has gone through...
Really?
I'd say that science itself,
the scientific method itself has gone through an evolution. If you look at the days of Aristotle, sure, Aristotle advocated for a deductive method when it comes to science. Afterwards, the scientific method had actually become more, you could say, inductive. And then after that, it became more empiricism, which is what we have at the moment. So the actual method has gone
If you
through.
take a scientific process, you know the Quran's giving, as the brothers mentioned, at least 2 falsification tests.
What would you mean?
Yes.
He's just saying.
Yeah, so there are 2 falsifications. Interesting, because part of the scientific method is falsification. The scientific method prides itself really on falsification. So you say, if I'm a scientist, I make a discovery, I publish it in a journal, another scientist somewhere else in the world picks up my discovery and tries to disprove me. If my discovery has not been falsified, it becomes part of science. The Quran has the same thing in it, in so much as it says in one verse, as I said to you, you'll be able to find many contradictions in it, i.e. the Quran, had it not been from God. But the other falsification test is found in chapter 2 of the Quran, where it says that if you believe that it's other than God, فَأْتُوا بِسُورَةٍ مِّن مِثْلِهِ وَدَعُوا شُهَدَاءَكُم مِّن دُونِ اللَّهِ إِن كُنتُمْ صَادِقِينَ. That make a chapter like it and call your witnesses from other than God if you are of the truthful. Now you can say this is very subjective, yeah? I would say to you that there is a quantifiable element to this. That the Quran is the most memorized book in the world. It has changed the political and sociological landscape, you could say, more than any other religion that came after it. And furthermore, it is used, or it's in practical usage, yes? It's in practical usage and implementation more than any other book. In other words, people have to pray with it 5 times a day and such. That suggests that the Quran has had the biggest effect, yes, of any book in the world. And that suggests, therefore, you could say, I know he would beg to differ, I know. But that would also suggest, therefore, that there's a quantifiable element to the Quranic challenge. So if you today made something like the Quran, you attempted to make something like the Quran, and my challenge to you would be, can you create an effect like the Quran? We're talking about Prophet Mohammed now, 1400 years after his death. Can you create something such that people will be talking about you 1400 years after your death, and also living by the words that you would apparently made up?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm pretty sure that with, say, the Quran and the Bible, that it was spread not only, it wasn't that people willingly chose to take it on, it was also forced as well.
What you said before, if you remember our discussion, was that you have no way of proving something is objective morality, yes?
Sure.
So if we take for granted what you're saying is true, me and Stephen will agree with you. That maybe there are there's some military element to the expansion of Islam in the early days. So what? That's my question. You can't say that's even wrong, because you can't even say that's wrong. So the point is, that's neither here nor there.